Welcome back. You're watching. Sorry, paperwork ready. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. It is 6:35. Good morning to you. We're online. We're on your radio for you this morning, and we're on TV.
We're everywhere. Shall we take a look at today's front pages? The Times leads with Jeremy Hunt's comments on the cover-up culture at the NHS causing preventable deaths, he says.
The Observer has an exclusive investigation on the poor condition of comprehensive schools across the country.
The Express covers the Chancellor's vow to help fix the cost of living crisis.
Mail on Sunday has the controversial booing of Prince William by Liverpool fans at the FA Cup final.
And the Sunday Telegraph leads on the criticism of the Bank of England by ministers for failing to properly control rising inflation.
Let's go through the papers then for you this morning with journalist Benedict Spence and broadcaster Andrew Ebor. Morning to you both.
Good morning.
Benedict, let's kick off with the Sunday Times, should we? And as Anne was talking about with Carol Sikora before, Jeremy Hunt saying the rogue NHS requires major surgery.
Yes, that's always a reassuring note to hear from a former health secretary, isn't it? To hear that the ministry that he was running for so long is in such dire straits. But this isn't news in the strictest sense, because actually, you know, this was even before the pandemic. Every year you'd hear about, the NHS is in crisis, it's got however many weeks before it collapses, it needs more money, and really, this is one of the sort of, it's wrong to say it's great unspoken conversations, because we're always talking about the NHS in this country, but there is an idea, isn't there, that it is some sort of wonderful health system. And I suppose, compared to a third world country, yes, it's fantastic. It was also fantastic when it was set up decades ago, but it has fundamentally failed to move with the times. If you look at pretty much every single health system across Europe and the developed world, nothing mirrors the NHS. They're more than happy to take what it does well, but they also learn from their mistakes, and the NHS just seems to sort of sit in this state stasis, I suppose. And, you know, we're paralysed about talking about reforming it, about improving it, because it only ever comes down to, the Tories are going to privatise it, and it's going to become the American system, which nobody in their right mind wants. But, you know, this is what Jerry Hunt is talking about. He's talking about a culture of omerta around cover-ups, avoidable deaths. He talks about civil servants preventing him or trying to prevent him from reading letters sent in by members of the public to talk about their own experiences. And it is that sort of thing where we all know that this has been going on for a very long time, but it's actually, you know, it's actually quite rare to hear a minister or a former minister actually say the quiet part out loud, which is that the system doesn't work, and actually just throwing money at the problem isn't going to solve it. It needs root and branch reform.
Yeah. I think you also have to balance it, don't you, as well? Because the NHS, we always criticise it, and there are those issues that you highlight. But you then look at certain things. Look at the States, for example, where if you don't have insurance, you don't get health care. And you start looking at that sort of side, it's really quite tragic. And you talk about when you talk about Trump making a reappearance and things like that, he's going to buy it at one stage.
The difficult thing about that is that, you know, the US and the UK's health systems, they come at the bottom of every health system that when it's ranked in the rest of the world. There are other countries, Switzerland, France, Italy, Germany. Russia has a pretty good health system compared to ours. You know, Eastern Europe, they do pretty well. And that's the big thing. We always sort of boil it down to this.
Well, people, when they talk about the NHS, they say it's the best in the world, when plainly it isn't. And I know there are people watching right now from all over the world. Do get in touch. What's the health system like where you're living at the moment? Yeah. Because I was in Spain recently talking to some expats in Spain. They say it's fantastic out here.
All of my international friends who live here say when they need something done, they go home to do it. And that doesn't matter where they come from, they go home, because they say the waiting times and the standard of care. The people who work in the NHS are very nice people. Nobody ever questions that. But when it actually comes to healthcare outcomes, they go home. They don't sit around.
I also think, as I say, putting the balance on it, it's not all bad and not all good. If we focus on the areas that need to be dealt with, you were talking earlier about prescription charges and people not being able to do it. One of the things I discovered fairly recently, and it was if people don't know about it, it will save you a fortune, is what's called the pre-payment certificate. Where if you have more than one prescription, basically you can pay £30.25 for 3 months, as many prescriptions as you need, or £108.10 for 12 months. So prescription charges at the moment are £9.35. If you're taking maybe 3 or 4 or 5, some people take more than that, you could save yourself an absolute fortune. Do look at the pre-payment certificate. But the point is that we should look at the good and the bad, because you do that, praise and criticise in equal measures, and then we can focus on those issues that need correcting.
Dental health care, for instance, and when the NHS was set up, it was meant to look after our teeth as well, wasn't it? You try finding an NHS dentist.
A dentist that won't take you on.
No, this is. It's all the prepayment thing is a great idea. I mean,
yeah.
£108 for 12 months would save you an absolute arm and a leg if you were getting a regular sort of prescription.
Literally an arm and a leg.
Well, literally. The problem is, though, those people who are least likely to be able to afford a prescription are least likely to be able to afford to shell out 110 quid.
Yeah.
Well, they can do it by direct debit if it helps. £10.81. It's worth looking into.
Yeah.
I was unaware of it until fairly recently, and it could save. They should tell you.
If you need it, your GP
you can save a fortune.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the Times, Rishi Sunak is promising that he's thinking about how he's going to help us.
Well, absolutely. Well, they're talking about, if there's new pressure on Sunak as 1 in 5 are pulled into higher tax bands. And this is an interesting way of spinning the story, because what they're saying is that an estimated 2.5 million more taxpayers will be dragged into rates of 40% or 45% because of the combination of fast-growing wages and a freeze in the point at which workers start paying. Well, what's happening, the reality is we're paying people more and therefore they're paying more taxes. The bands are exactly the same. At 12,570 you don't pay anything. Up to 50,270 you pay 20%. 150,000 up to there you pay 40%, and over 150,000 you pay 45%. What they're saying with the increased demands and increased wages, people are being effectively paying more. So this is a negative story, but actually it could be a positive one. You could turn around and say, isn't it great we're paying people more money? But you have to pay more money in order to make sure that it's the cost of living.
They've got to readjust the tax bands, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not actually that long ago that they moved the 40% rate up from 30 odd to 50, but they've got to keep moving it every year.
They do, and I think the fact that we're paying people more to sort of keep pace with the cost of living. The UK is in a recession whilst we're going through a massive spike of inflation, and actually one does kind of get the sense that the government doesn't have a handle on it and that they're not quite sure how to get a handle on it.
Well, in fact, the story you've been looking at in the Telegraph shows that ministers are sort of turning around to the Bank of England and blaming them.
Well, that's exactly the thing. I mean, we had the Queen's speech, and there wasn't a great deal of red meat in there. Certainly not a lot of policy detail that made you think, oh yes, these chaps, they have a handle on it. And now it does appear to be the case. Yesterday they were blaming civil servants and saying we're going to shed 90,000 civil servants' jobs and that'll save us money. Now they're turning around to the Bank of England and saying, oh, you're not doing enough. It does seem to be a sort of a culture in Westminster at the moment to say it is everybody else's fault but us. It's the war in Ukraine, it's COVID, it's this, that and the other. Ultimately, the Conservative Party has been in power for 10 odd years now, more than that. And, a lot of this stuff, that is happening, wars around the world, possible pandemic, people have been warning about pandemics for years, the state of the NHS, the state of our energy infrastructure. This is not new stuff. This is all stuff that has been warned about, and people have just put off doing it. And now the chicken's coming home to roost. The answer to all of this stuff is it's going to take long-term investment and long-term reform, but nobody wants to say that because it means admitting, short-term, we're in for a lot of pain.
Yeah, and as you say, it's always the blame game, isn't it? It's not invented here, or this is not my problem, it's somebody else's. And if you focus on that, as we say, if we focus on solutions as opposed to problems, we'd be in a much better position.
It's very odd with the Bank of England, though, at the minute, because inflation's rising, interest rates are... Now, the interest rates, they go up, they say, well, that will help deal with inflation. Right. Except it won't, because it's the way it all works. They're increasing interest rates to make us think like we're going to do something which will help people. It all seems very odd.
It is very odd, and as I say, it's this wonderful misdirection, as you say. You sort of increase things and people getting higher wages. The reality is, how much does it cost to put the food on your table? And it doesn't matter if you're paying people zillions. You look around the world, if you can't afford to eat and you can't afford to do the basic things and so on and so forth in life, that's the issue.
Well, what about if you can't afford to upkeep your school?
Oh, a lovely segue there. Oh, come on.
In the Observer, they're looking at the fact that so many of our schools are crumbling, and they are saying that there is a risk to life.
It is another thing where people are looking for that sort of stuff. It's are crumbling the schools a risk to life, officials warn, number 10. And they're looking at different schools around the place. And they're basically, many school buildings in England are now in such disrepair, it is a risk to life. And I think this is what's going to happen. We were talking about this earlier in the break. You have different schools, which are some really, really old buildings, which you have problems about being able to do work to them, because you need all sorts of permissions and so on and so forth. We were also talking to one of our wonderful people in production as well, who says that she used to have lots of fun at her school. We used to bang on the wall of the classroom next door, and it virtually collapsed on the class next door. So there are real issues, and it's a question of making sure that you've got the finance to deal with that. The problem with the news generally is that we focus on one issue, when all of these issues issues are running in parallel, and all of these issues need to be dealt with. And as I say, we need to praise and criticise in equal measure, but don't push those problems, such as crumbling schools, under the carpet. We need to address those, make sure there's proper finance, have appropriate sort of ways of raising money, and make that make sense.
There's been a lot of new schools built. I mean, all around me, all the schools are brand new. And
These other ones are crumbling. They have to build new ones.
Well, yes, but then if you can afford to build new ones, you can afford to
Repair the old ones.
the old ones.
A lot of these schools that we're talking about now, I think, were built in the sort of the 60s and 70s, and we forget that was a while ago. Actually, it might seem like it was yesterday, but it's half a century ago now. And a lot of them were not actually built to last centuries, like say our public schools were sort of built to sort of stand the test of time. But then if you go to a school that's 400, 500, 600 years old, well, those are crumbling as well because they're 400, 500, 600 years old. So it is a sort of a meeting in the middle, I suppose, of different sorts of problems, but ultimately the same outcome, which is that a lot of school buildings are just not fit for purpose. And in many cases, I think local authorities decide, let's just start again and build something that's going to last a little longer now.
And as always, it's not a surprise that this is a story. It's a surprise it's coming out now.
Yes.
All of a sudden, everybody said, well, here's this problem, here's that problem, here's another problem.
Yeah, and it must be overwhelming.
Exactly.
It's number 10. Can you imagine?
Okay, Benedict, Andrew, thank you. We shall catch you both a little bit
Yeah, lots more to talk about next time because, of course, we've got the FA Cup final finishing on penalties and the Eurovision Song Contest, which was an amazing final as well.